Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Sometimes the best way to find a living is to stay right where you are and study with UAS online. Career-specific distance programs from the University of Alaska Southeast are the fastest way to increase your earning power.
We connect all over the world.
The National Weather Service.
Good evening, and thanks again for joining us for Friday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy. Satellite imagery showing some clouds here across the southern part of the state and more coming northwestward here associated with this system. Out to the west, got a system here that's pushing eastward, while the northern one, upper level low that was out here over the southeast Bering Sea earlier this week, is now pulling off to the northwest there, and band of clouds extending back to the coast there, but not a lot going on with it. Some more moisture lifting northward, and also boundary here from the Pribilofs down across the Alaska Peninsula. Lots of clouds back to the east here, with frontal boundary somewhere right in through here, probably just north of the Aleutians there. And you can see that's really elongated out to the east, but this portion beginning to shift northward, while this area starts to drop off to the southwest with the colder push of air way out that way. Otherwise, this system, as I mentioned, moving northwestward with a band of clouds and maybe some light snow flurries, that sort of thing, really nothing significant. Coming across St. Lawrence Island, extending almost into western Norton Sound there, but pretty good conditions for the Seward Peninsula. Northwestward up to the Arctic coast, some patchy areas of low clouds, fog and flurries, again on the east side and possibly along or near the coast back here to the west, but looking pretty light wind-wise here through much of the interior. And down over the Gulf of Alaska, got this system trying to push up to the northwest there. A lot more moisture gathering off to the southeast there, mostly off the panhandle. Some of that's slipping on in, mostly in the form of clouds. Some showers did get in close to the coastline this afternoon, but very light. And again, the bulk of the moisture staying off to the west there, and some bands of showers rolling up to the southern Kenai Peninsula and coming in toward Kodiak Island. On the chart today, this afternoon, front way down to the south yet, so quite a cloud shield extending out from that all the way up in across the panhandle. Just some showers, areas of light rain, mostly along the coast associated with that. And same sort of thing here coming up to the Kenai Peninsula. But again, the main rain-producing clouds still farther off to the southeast. Otherwise, the interior looking really nice today again. South central Alaska with on over to Bristol or into Prince William Sound, Copper River Basin, all looking pretty nice. Even the northern panhandle, some clearing there over the northern areas of the more solid cloud cover on down to the south of Dixon entrance. And about the only moisture going on up there over the eastern Arctic coast, a few flurries, and possibly something here near the mountains, but nothing much at all. And another band right across the Alaska Peninsula. Winds increase here as you head west out toward the main frontal boundary, which is just south of the Aleutians, give or take. Actually, it could be a little bit to the north as of this time here, but rain and wind, gale force wind associated with that here from west in Nikolsky, all the way back, turning a little more northeasterly out towards Shemya. And for the forecast, we'll see that thing does lift slowly northward, not really moving too fast one way or the other. Slipping off to the east here brings a chance of rain into Nikolsky late tonight with increase in the winds, but the stronger winds now will be shifting up into the south and southwest Bering Sea, coming back around, just catching Shemya and Attu, with lighter conditions over to Adak and Atka. Otherwise, still looking at a chance of rain here. More of an easterly flow developing, so Chance of rain, southern Kenai Peninsula. Definitely rain into Kodiak Island, rain and fog, gusty winds as well, but the main system staying down to the south here, the Pacific Jet also well to the south. Otherwise, just variably cloudy here for the southeast coast, mostly cloudy along the coast. Some clouds up toward Yakutat, fair over the interior with light winds all the way up to the Arctic coast. Same thing as you saw today. The flurries and fog mostly on the east side, bare conditions west, and dry through the northern Bering Sea and the Chukchi areas, which tomorrow will continue for those areas as well. Maybe a little more clearing up here along the Arctic coast, but definitely dry all the way down into the interior. Again, variable clouds, mostly sunny skies, especially the eastern interior here in the Tanana Valley, looking really good. On down the Panhandle as well, just some clouds, dry conditions, this front and the precipitation remaining off the coast. But coming back in, periods of rain, southern Kenai Peninsula, kind of still questionable as to how far north that precipitation will get. But from northern Cook Inlet on up, looking pretty good. And some of this could possibly slip up into western Prince William Sound, but probably not. What does probably won't affect the visibilities at all, since VFR is in the forecast through tomorrow here for all of Prince William Sound northward to the Arctic coast. So look for windy, wet conditions, Kodiak Island, and rain possibly heavy at times, upward sloping areas of the Aleutian Range. And then less wind on down the peninsula there, that low center, and less gradient in toward the low center, 986 millibars, but windier conditions out of the east here from northern Bristol Bay, Cape Newnham, on out to the Pribilofs. And again, the front here still edging its way northward, back to the northwest, but dragging southeastward there, keeping wet conditions in across all of the Fox Islands. And then periods of rain or showers here south of the front, extending all the way out to the Komodorskis. And second day of the weekend, not a lot of difference here. This front does manage to push some moisture northeastward here into Bristol Bay, and then a mixed condition with this trough right through here through the southwest interior. Areas of light rain or snow or showery conditions, cloudy skies to be sure, and then a break behind that, and then some more moisture here with this front. Not anything particularly heavy, but should make for a wet day for the Pribilof Islands. And then northeast winds carrying that back down into the western Aleutian areas. Could break out south of the front, maybe some clearing here with pretty scattered and far between showers there for the eastern Aleutian. So not a bad day there for Unalaska and Dutch Harbor on Sunday. And the interior still dry, still variably cloudy, and still light on the winds, especially over the Copper River Basin. Into the North Gulf Coast, actually, variable winds possibly there all the way up to the Brooks Range. And not too bad, even light winds on the eastern Arctic coast in the forecast there. I think about 5 knots variable for the east side, and not much stronger here to the west. But they do pick up here over the Chukchi Sea, say from Point Ley on down, kind of a significant increase in the winds compared to what they'll be on the central and eastern coast. But dry, variably cloudy, again to mostly sunny for the Brooks Range, on down into the Tanana Valley and the Koyukuk right out to the Seward Peninsula. Partial clearing, dry conditions, St. Lawrence Island. Maybe the wind's picking up somewhat here as this whole system approaches, and you still have that high holding over Wrangell Island, so the gradient might tighten up a little bit for some increase in the winds. Otherwise, looks like this is going to push in south of the Panhandle, so mostly cloudy, call out from Dixon Entrance up across Prince of Wales Island, eastward to maybe Hyder, but northern areas here, especially the central southeast coast, sees the best chance of sunshine on Sunday. And then there's kind of a band of moisture right up through here with some scattered showers in it. They could pop up over Yakutat. Otherwise, looking kind of mostly cloudy there to partly sunny for Prince William Sound. Otherwise, temperatures this afternoon for the Panhandle, upper 40s to 50s, with 59 over at Stewart, one of the warmer locations, 52 Klawock as well as Wrangell, 48 Skagway and Elephant Cove, 53 for Yakutat, 52 Cordova. Lower 50s here across south central Alaska from 53 at Talkeetna to 53 at Homer. Kenai 52 degrees. A little cooler at Seward with 47. Mid to upper 40s here for the Kodiak Island area. 51 Gulkana. Mid 40s for the Tanana Valley. And lower to mid 40s back to the west. Cooling into the mid to upper 30s up over the Yukon Flats such as Bettles, 37 in the Koyukuk Valley, and 27 in Atuvik. And temperatures 10 to 15 up along the Arctic coast. Milder back to the west, Point Ley with 26, up to 30 Cape Lisburne. And lower to mid-30s here across the northwest with Kotzebue at 34 degrees, while Nome pushed up to 41. 50 degrees start the afternoon temperature at McGrath, to 52 at Sleepmute, and then 50 at Bethel, 37 at Omotic, with a 38-degree reading at Unalakleet, and about the same at Macoriac. Mid to upper 30s there for the Pribilofs this afternoon, lower to mid-40s for the Central Aleutians, near 40 for Shemya, and lower 40s here at Unalaska, warmed into the lower 50s up toward King Salmon. And for the lows for tonight, still some areas dropping to the dark side of zero up there along the Arctic coast, maybe the North Slope, but not too far. And single numbers and teens down the east side to Eagle, maybe as far south as Northway and Tok, with teens to mid-20s through the Tanana Valley. 20s warm into the 30s, in fact upper 30s here for Bristol Bay, near 40 for the Alaska Peninsula, a little cooler out to the west, and looks like 30s to lower 40s for the Panhandle. Highs for tomorrow, pretty nice, warming into the mid-50s here, especially in the Susitna Valley, down toward Willow and maybe Palmer, and maybe even the Kenai Peninsula a little bit there, depending on how much cloudiness actually works northward. But the southern southeast coast, lower 60s there, especially for Prince of Wales Island, Annette, maybe Metlakatla, in those areas. Definitely the warm spot in the state tomorrow, otherwise lower to mid-40s for the Aleutians. And for flying weather, good VFR, quite a bit over the interior. Got some marginal VFR, that moisture coming northwestward here, showing up along the southern coast of the Kenai Peninsula. Looks like it'll stay out of Prince William Sound. IFR, Barren Islands, Kodiak, and along the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula. Narrow band right in through here. Otherwise VFR, St. Lawrence Island, excuse me, VFR for the southeast coast, and a lot of IFR out there over the Aleutians with that system pushing northward into the south central Bering Sea. For tomorrow afternoon, we're looking better actually. IFR still down toward Kodiak Island, but less marginal VFR for the Kenai Peninsula area. And looks like the southwest coast, pretty well VFR, even Nunivak Island. IFR rolls into the Pribilofs, southward here across the Alaska Peninsula in areas that will extend west to about Atka, and then some more IFR out toward Shemya. Up north, areas of marginal VFR at times, North Slope Arctic coast, VFR interior on down the southeast coast. Passes looking good, all VFR, Brooks Range, VFR for Anatuvik and Adigan. And it looks like Lake Clark, Merrill, and Rainey, Sealing's visibilities will be unlimited for those areas, maybe even windy as well. And it'll stay VFR for Isabel and Mentasta. Tanita, definitely VFR. Portage, I'd say VFR looks good. I don't think too much in the way of clouds do get up there. It will knock the visibilities down enough to drop it a category. So VFR for Portage probably through Sunday. And then for Chilkoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels here, 2,000 to 6,000 feet there across the southeast coast. And then at the surface along the North Gulf Coast, now through Kuskokwim Bay, so a little warmer out here over the Bering Sea, 2,000 feet here up to the south coast of the Norton Sound area or the north coast of the Yukon Delta, and about 2,000 to 4,000 feet there out over the Aleutians. Icing with all that moisture streaming northwestward, looks like, again, mostly off the coast, but some will come into the Kenai Peninsula. Questionable to how far north it'll get, but it'll be definitely in across Kodiak Island to the Aleutian Range, across the Alaska Peninsula there to the Pribilofs, and then just some hit and miss stuff out to the west, a little more extensive area of mixed type icing over the western Aleutians. Icing free for the Panhandle northward through the interior to the Arctic coast. And the jet stream, a lot of upper level ridging here across Alaska into the Arctic, back to the Russian Far East. So the clockwise flow around that with the lower pressure to the south, Pacific jet well to the south, cutting in across California. So we've got southeast flow here, 50 to 100 knots or 100 knots, dropping back to 50 knots in the Bering Sea. And that's making it hard for that front to really get any eastward progress there, very slowly kind of bucking the winds there. So at 9,000 feet, easterly flow pretty evident here, a little more southeasterly off the Panhandle. That's where the strongest winds will be, 30 to 45 knots here off the coast, but rolling right into the Barren Islands, Kodiak Island area. 30 knotters here across the Alaska Peninsula, drop back to 25 towards St. Lawrence Island, and 5 to 15 knot winds from the central interior to the Arctic coast, and lighter winds here over the central Aleutians with that front lifting northward. but northeast 50 for Shimmy and Attu. 3,000 feet, about the same here, up to 50 knots, Kodiak Island. Kind of a narrow band of stronger winds, dropping back to 20 around Kachemak Bay, and then 10 to 20 over the interior, mostly southern interior, lighter to the north. And these easterly winds slowly shifting northward into the southern Bering Sea at 25 knots back to the Fox Islands, 40 to 45 for the far western Aleutians. And again, this area wind will be along or off the coast of the Panhandle. So looking at turbulence, not too bad. Looks like the mechanical stuff, light to isolated and moderate over the northern Panhandle, and then moderate chop. Here are those winds along and on the lee side of the Aleutian Range. Back to almost Nunivak Island with light to isolated moderate chop across the Pribilofs. Not too bad for the Aleutians, and then with stronger winds, occasionally moderate out there for the Shimmy Attu area. And after the break, I'll be back with a look at the marine forecasts.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, and joining us once again is Eric Stevens, our good friend from GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska, based up at UAF. And thanks for joining us, Eric. Really appreciate it.
Oh, happy to be here, Dave.
And we love to hear about all the fascinating developments, new and old, and how we're using the tools here, especially around Alaska. And I've got to think that, satellite meteorology right now is a fascinating time to be involved in. If we go back to the first satellite, Tyros, back in 1960, I think is when we got some of those first pictures. Weather and meteorology probably changed that day for a whole lot of people, and it's still changing today, right?
Oh, you know it. Satellite imagery is so important, and it's getting better all the time. Yeah. Of course, never perfect, but especially for us in Alaska, where there are other data sets like radars and weather balloons are so thinly spread. Right. The satellite is the great equalizer because the satellite sees everything.
Right.
Yeah. Right. We've got one particular issue in volcanic ash detection.
That's a big deal here. Yeah.
You know it. If you fly an airplane into volcanic ash, your jet engine might just fail. And an airplane without engines is in a world of hurt. Sure. So if there's a volcano that goes off, satellite imagery is the way to track that plume of ash and to tell pilots this is where you need to not be to avoid this ash plume. And there's a phrase out there, what's the difference? What's the difference?
Okay.
Well, it turns out, what we're going to discuss today, that the difference is everything. There's a technique called channel differencing.
Okay.
That if you take one piece of the spectrum of what the satellite detects and a slightly different wavelength of that spectrum, even though those two images might look similar, magical things happen when you subtract one from the other. And they reveal information that was already there, but it was hard to find until you did that subtraction.
This sounds like Nicolas Cage in National Treasure when he's got those fancy glasses and he's flipping one up and back and forth. I mean, is this what we're talking about?
Well, look, let's go more highbrow and talk Michelangelo.
Oh,
so apparently Michelangelo made some amazing sculpture, and someone said, Michael, that's amazing. How did you do it? And Michelangelo's reply allegedly was, well, in that rock, the statue was already in there.
Right.
I just scraped away the unnecessary bits. In satellite meteorology, sometimes there are meteorological features that are in the data, but you can't see it until you combine or difference some of the channels.
Okay.
And we've got a case, good old Pavlov volcano goes off now and then.
Sure.
And you can observe directly a picture of the volcano. Just take it with your iPhone. You can see a volcano going
erupting.
off.
Yep.
Right. But if you want to get the broad view, we need satellite to do that. Now, there are a couple of wavelengths that we can look at. So what's a wavelength? That's the amount of space between a peak and a valley and another peak in a certain part of the electromagnetic spectrum. We're going to look at 12 micron wavelength and 10.8 micron wavelength.
What is a micron?
So what's a micron? Yeah, we're getting into the geek department now. A micron is a unit of length, and it is quite tiny. We're looking at what's called long wave wavelengths.
Okay.
But it takes 25,000 of these microns to make an inch. A human blood cell is about 5 microns across. So when we're talking about 12 micron imagery as allegedly long wave, well, that's relative.
Pretty short for light.
Yeah, it's other part of the, it's just an expression for the spectrum there.
Okay.
So we can look at a 12 micron image, say a satellite image. At 12 microns, we're seeing a heat signature here really, and the way this color enhancement works is the yellow and the red stuff is high cold clouds down here over the Gulf of Alaska into South Central. And if you were asked, where do you find the volcanic ash plume in this image?
Hey, where do you find the volcanic plume in this image?
It's hard to do. I'm not sure I could find it. If you were to look at this image and just say, show me what jumps out at you here, I'd say, well, nothing really. Well, let's look. So 12 micron doesn't help us. Let's look at 10.8 microns.
All right.
All right, look at that. It's practically the same image. So where's this volcanic ash? Can't find it at 12 microns, can't really see it at 10.8, but when we subtract one channel from the other, magically the plume appears. The color enhancement here highlights the ash in blue.
Wow.
The information was already there, but we couldn't find it until we subtracted one channel from another.
Very interesting.
It's almost magical. Similarly, let's say you're looking for fog up on the North Slope. It's kind of a foggy neighborhood.
Sure.
In 11 micron and 3.9 micron, we've got a 3.9 micron image here. It's a big fuzzy blur over Barrow. We can't see where the fog is. But the information is lurking in there waiting for us to reveal it. All we have to do is find that difference between the 11 micron and the 3.9, and then this image becomes this image, and the fog bank jumps right out, and you can see it up there at Barrow. Now, you got to choose the right tool for the job.
Sure.
Like they say, you open your toolbox, all kinds of stuff in there. What do we need for this particular task? If you want to find volcanic ash, we look at 12 and 10.8 micron, find that difference. If you want to find fog, we'll look at 11 and 3.9 micron, find that difference. It's great, different tools for different jobs. Of course, there's always caveats and gotchas, but this fog procedure, it only works at night, because when the sun comes up, it gets in the way. So every product has its strengths and limitations, and in meteorology, the challenge is using the right tool for the right job, and these are some of those tools.
And discovery is still happening, even with meteorology. The weather's been around for a long time, but the tools that are being developed to understand the meteorology is fascinating and still very new science.
It's such a young science. We've come so far. I'm getting old enough now that I can literally say that, when I was a boy, we didn't have this kind of thing. And there's new things happening all the time. New satellites will be launched in coming years that will have better instruments than ever before. It's an exciting time, and this is so helpful for Alaska because satellites help fill in the gaps between other ways of observing the weather. Satellites, the great equalizer for Alaska.
Yeah, and help so many people stay safe in so many ways every day up here in the last frontier.
Yeah, that's what it's all about, protecting lives and property.
Well, thank you so much for joining us again, Eric. We love to hear about this fascinating information, and boy, it just makes me want to go watch satellite pictures all day. So hopefully we're inspiring more people to do the same thing, and just be curious. It's a wonderful thing. Thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts, and we'll see you next time.
Welcome back. North winds up to 30 knots for northern Lynn Canal tomorrow. So small craft advisories there, falling back to about 20 Frederick Sound and especially Stevens Passage for those north winds. And even lower winds here in the forecast for Clarence Strait down to 15 knots, 4-foot seas, northeast 15 on the south coast, gradually increase north here to about 25, maxing out along this portion of the coastline with 12-foot seas falling back to 20 farther north. And then for Sunday for south central Alaska, northeast at 10, picking up to 20 here. South of the Forelands, 25 knots across Augustine Island and Kachemak Bay. Back down to 20 knots for Shelikof Strait. And looks like the wind's coming down to roughly about 20 knots, but still holding on to some small craft advisories for the Barren Islands out of the east. And then dropping back to 15 for the eastern North Gulf Coast. Light variable winds for Prince William Sound. And for tomorrow, south central Alaska, north at 15, northeast 15 here, north of the Forelands, but small craft advisory south all the way down. Possible gales for Shelikof Strait and minimum gales for east side of Kodiak Island up into the Barrens and small craft advisories onto the east. And for, let me bounce that again. Okay, the Alaska Peninsula. Northeast at 30, turning east here as you head down the coastline, and easterlies 25 to 30 knots from Cape Sarachev all the way back up towards Sitkinik. Seas there about 10 to 13 feet. And for Sunday, Bristol Bay east at about 20, but southeast winds now, but only 15 to 20 knots here blowing across the peninsula. 9-foot seas south side versus 5 on the north shore, and east at 20 from Castle Cape to Sitkinak. For the Aleutians, tomorrow, small craft advisories across the Fox Islands, east turning southeast, falling back to 15 to 20 here for Adak and Atka, and then west of Kiska Island, northeast 40 knots. And then for Sunday, those fall back to 30 knots and 20 to 25 east northeasterlies here into the central Aleutians. Much lighter winds there toward Unalaska Island, just 10 to 15 knots from the east-southeast. And for the southwest coast, north of Nunivak Island, lighter winds, but 30 knots there south of Nunivak Island. Small craft advisories for the Pribilofs up to St. Matthew Island. And for Sunday, northeast winds at 30 here from the northern Bering Sea. So gradient tightening up, winds pick up as well, getting pretty brisk there, St. Lawrence Island, with brisk and small craft advisories all the way down to Kuskokwim Bay. Arctic coast, eastern Beaufort Sea coast, east tomorrow, 10 to 15, staying light and a little more variable here for the central and west side. Kicking into the northeast here down toward Cape Lisburne to about Cape Thompson, and then a light easterly drift on down to Wales. And Sunday, picking it up a little bit there, brisk wind advisories from Wales to Cape Beaufort. 20 knots here for the west side, falling back to 10 on the central coast. So from the central coast eastward, really light variable winds to demarcation point. And for tonight, again, no change over the interior or the Arctic coast here with fair conditions, clearing. Chance of rain, southern Kenai Peninsula, definitely rain for Kodiak Island, on down to the Alaska Peninsula there, dry over Bristol Bay and the Bering Sea. Dry with variable clouds to the southeast coast. Gusty winds and rain with a wind diminishing here over the central Aleutians as that front pushes eastward and weakens. Bring some rain into the Aleutians, linking up with this system. So rain actually probably more showery here, especially in Bristol Bay, but rain along the southern coast or southeast coast of the Alaska Peninsula to Kodiak Island, southern Kenai Peninsula, staying off the southeast coast. And then for Sunday, not much change. Nice for the Panhandle. A little better chance of moisture here over the southwest.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.